Hey everybody, it's Dion, and this is your Friday, April 3rd Hope Update. First, I want to say thank you to all of you who fasted with me on Wednesday. It's just great to be in solidarity, seeking God together, humbling ourselves, and saying, God, whatever you're doing in the world right now, we trust you, and you've got our attention. Have your way, form us. So thanks for doing that. And now that we're into April, I'll tell you what I'm encouraged by. Not only does there continue to be good news of medical innovation and new things happening on just the front of battling this virus, but I'm just really grateful for spring. I'm grateful for green grass growing here on our campus. I'm grateful for budding trees. I'm grateful for the fact that even though this world seems so crazy right now, I'm grateful that God continues to be good and that he continues to bring life all around us. And just as I look around the world right now, I see reminders of God's faithfulness, that he is a God not of the dead, but he's a God of the living. And so even when we're struggling against harsh realities of sickness that is making people die, the reality is God is a God of the living. And he's not only a healer and a restorer, but he's a God of resurrection. Now we're about just under a week from celebrating Easter, where we're going to celebrate this in full. But along the way, we're going to hold on to this hope. And one of the things I've been thinking about is the fact that we as people of faith are called to respond differently, to react differently to moments of crisis like this than everyone else. And that, I'm sure, doesn't surprise you at all. And yet it really is true. And so today I want to share with you the words from Psalm 14, because it gives us some of the reason as to why this is the way it is. Psalm 14, it says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, their deeds are vile, there is no one who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there's anyone who understands, anyone who seeks God. And yet he finds that all have turned away, all have become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. Do all the evildoers know nothing? They devour my people as though eating bread. They never call on the Lord," which, talking about people living differently, this idea that no one's seeking God, no one's looking for understanding, God's wisdom, no one's calling upon the name of the Lord. That's not us, right? We've been praying on the 19s. We've even fasted. We're saying, God, we're here. We're your people. We look to you in times of crisis. So we're different than the people that Psalm 14 is talking about. But then it says this. It says, but there they are, these evildoers, overwhelmed with dread. For God is present in the company of the righteous. You evildoers frustrate the plans of the poor, but the Lord is their refuge. And then it says, oh, that salvation for Israel would come out of Zion. When the Lord restores his people, let the people of God rejoice, and let us be glad. See, it's a reminder that being overwhelmed, that's not for us, not for people who know God. That as we look around the world, even when we see dreadful things, we ultimately look for signs of hope, because we know our God is a God of hope. He's a God of the living, not a God of the dead. And so we don't become overwhelmed like the rest of the world. Our response is different. Now, I don't want to shame you if you feel overwhelmed sometimes as this whole thing is playing out. It's only natural to feel that. I know I myself sometimes feel a little overwhelmed. Sometimes I have moments where I feel fearful, I feel angry, I feel dread. And yet I have the ability, and I hope you do too, just to remind myself of the goodness of God. That as a child of God, I don't need to be overwhelmed. There's a God in heaven who's looking out for me. And he's the God of the living. He's a God of hope. He's not the God of the dead. And again, as I look around the creation right now, as I see the grass and the trees budding, I'm just reminded of that God is faithful to his promise. There's a song that we sing. It's part of our Sounds of Christmas experience, and it's called Seasons. And it just talks about how God works through the different seasons. And, there's winter, and winter looks like death, and winter is long. And you start to wonder, are we ever going to find life again? And God in his time always brings us back to life. And that's certainly true of the human life, the human season for those who trust God. Even in our darkest moments, in our winter, even as we're facing death, we have the hope of either healing in this life, or we have hope of healing in the life to come, of true resurrection, of true spring and summer forever. Another psalm that I want to share with you today, just as a word of encouragement, and this is a promise that we claim, the reason that we live differently, we don't become overwhelmed or filled with dread, like other people do. The reason we wait on God to restore us, we sing songs of joy. It's Psalm 1. It's the first psalm in all of the book of Psalms, and it simply says this: "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the instruction of God. The one who meditates on his law day or night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers." And then it says, verse 6, "For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction." Now, here's what I know. I know that righteous people and unrighteous people alike are being affected by this disease. It's not like God's people are being completely spared. I actually know of a faithful woman who just lost her own health battle with COVID and succumbed to that here not too far away. And she's a faithful woman, and so I know this happens. And yet, even for her, even for those of us who experience sickness and death in this life, God doesn't forsake us. And so what I want to call you to is a reminder that when we humble ourselves before God, when we call upon the name of God, we really have nothing to fear. And so I'm going to challenge you in those moments when you're feeling overwhelmed to look around you at the world around you, to remember that God is the God of the living, not the God of the dead. He's the God of spring and summer, not the God of winter. Winter comes, yes, but God is always doing something new. He's the God of resurrection. Remind yourself of that. Maybe read Psalm 1 or Psalm 14 over and over again. Read Psalm 91, which is what we've been praying on the 19s of the hours. Read Psalm 46, our God is a refuge and strength. All of those are great words of comfort to bring you out of that place of being overwhelmed, not living in dread, knowing that God is with us and he's for us. And you see, as God's people, if we can live that way, then we will be markedly different than everyone else in the world right now, who's panicking, who's hunkering down, who's afraid. And we will set ourselves up as true lights in a dark place. We will be bringers of hope. So I just want to encourage you to do that. That's what I'm going to keep doing. Encourage one another, hold each other accountable to be people of hope. Like I said, let's enjoy the great spring weather. Let's look forward to our celebration of Easter, whatever it looks like. I'm not going to be down, whatever it looks like. I'm just grateful that we are a people who are a resurrection people, because our God is a God of the living, not of the dead. So God is for us. He is with us. Don't forget it. There's your hope update.